people tend to try to write to either too many people. You write
Mhm.
on your homepage or on your site, on your marketing assets to try to appeal to a wide audience of like, well, we want to appeal to the champion, we want to appeal to their boss, we want to appeal to the C-suite. And when any of those people land on our website, they need to understand what we do. The problem is those people aren't reading your website.
Hey everyone, welcome to On Messaging, a show for B2B product marketers on how to create messaging that resonates with your audience. I'm your host, Josh Chronister, and on the show today I have Collin Mayjack, Principal Product Marketing Manager at GoFundMe. Before joining GoFundMe, Collin worked in product marketing at Oncue and Dataro. During our conversation, you'll learn the 7 messaging principles Collin uses to drive alignment across product, marketing, and sales, the secret to testing messaging without fancy tools, a fresh take on feature versus benefit messaging, how to navigate internal messaging politics, and so much more. If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow it on your favorite podcast app, YouTube, or Substack. It's the best way to get notified of every new episode. All right, let's jump into the conversation. Hey, Collin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Dude, thanks for having me. I feel like you have come out swinging with a lineup of greats. So I feel honored to be here.
Of course, of course. I mean, I've always had you on my list, especially the product marketing alliance stuff, the Holy Shift, your podcast, and everything. And I was super excited when you're like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump on." I know it's we've been going back and forth on like dates and timelines and things like that. We
We
both
did
live
it.
in the yeah, we both live in the South, and I think a couple months ago, you got the first edge of a random snowstorm. I was getting it
Uh-huh.
afterwards, and you're like, "Hey, can we postpone this? I want to go play in the snow with my kids." And I'm like, "Absolutely, I know how it
I feel
is."
like that is one of the baseline pleasures of remote work. Like
For sure.
if you can't call it quits on a snow day or cut out early on a snow day, it's like, what are we even doing here? Why are we even working remote if we can't do this kind of stuff? So yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate the flexibility.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I'm glad we can do it now. But let's jump into some product marketing talk. You've been pretty open about your shift from product marketing and even have a podcast like I just mentioned called Holy Shift. You speak with former pastors transitioning out of ministry. But I wanted your take personally. How has that transition from pastor to product marketer helped you better understand customers as well as developing messaging?
Yeah, if you break down what a pastor does all the time. So like I wasn't the one standing up and teaching every Sunday, but I was teaching a lot and standing in front of a group a lot. You are working from this complicated old text, often written in a different language for a different time in a different place, to something technical. It could be called technical.
Mhm.
And you are finding ways to translate the message or the value of that old complicated text and bring it to bear in a really relevant way with people that you actually know. And that skill of take something complex, translate it to something simple, doing that, and then do it all over again, week in, week out, and then
Mhm.
find ways to engage your audience, in this case, your church, with that similar message week in, week out, often inviting them to do the same things week in, week out.
Mhm.
That was a skill that was honed in pastoring, but it doesn't take a super discerning listener to think, oh, well, that kind of sounds like messaging product marketing. You have this complex product that makes a lot of sense if you're technical, but if
Mhm.
you're not technical and you're the everyday person, you're the most buyers, uh, then it needs a lot of translation. The value isn't immediately apparent, much like when someone thumbs open a page of the Bible, they
Yeah.
don't immediately know, like, what do I do differently? This was written to someone on the other side of the world 2 to 4,000 years ago. So that's the TLDR. I think that skill of teaching me to take something that's complex and make it simple is probably what I initially fell in love with about product marketing, because it
Yeah.
was so much of what I knew and felt like I was good at.
Yeah. Wow. I never like went that deep into the connection there, but I feel like that is totally spot on, and the way it translates to product marketing, specifically messaging, like you say, like complex is simple, the value is not immediate sometimes. Translating it to everyday listener or someone who is there at least interested in hearing, in product marketing stance, it could be the buyer. But that's cool. I love the podcast. The name,
Thanks, man.
dude, the name is phenomenal. I think you put up like I think you put up a poll and like asked for names, and I think I clicked on the holy shift.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Honestly, I will
so
say,
good.
just an aside for anyone who wants to like practice messaging, because what I've realized is when you're in a company, I mean, you hinted at this just now, like with your CEO reviewing some of your work, you're if you're in a company, unless it's a very lenient company led with a lot of, say, a marketing leader who is willing to take a lot of risks,
Hmm.
you're going to have to compromise your messaging.
Yeah.
And having a side project, I mean, like what you're doing with my messaging, what I've done with Holy Shift, uh, there's tons of other people who've gotten to do this. Until you own your own thing, whether it's a side project or a passion project or a business, you don't really ever get to fully cut loose on messaging. And
Yeah.
for me, I feel like having a side project of like having a strong point of view and getting to say whatever I want has actually made me a better writer and a better messenger.
Yeah.
Messenger? What would you say? What would be
Messenger.
what's the noun?
Oh man.
Messenger? That
Mes-
doesn't sound right.
I guess that could be it.
You get the gist.
Messenger giving a message. That's hilarious. Yes. But yeah, you're totally right. When you have something that you can have complete ownership on, control over, yeah, when you're working in a corporate business, you do have to kind of rein it in sometimes, especially within the brand voice. And you have a lot of people that might be sitting at the table, have an opinion on things. Depending what size company you work for, maybe it's a
Yeah.
startup. You could very easily, if you're working in a smaller startup, have someone on the leadership team or even the founder still influencing messaging quite a lot.
Yeah.
Versus if you work at a larger company, a large, maybe publicly traded organization, typically someone in the C staff is not reviewing messaging and what's being sent out there. But I guess it's case by case, it ranges. But it is nice having something of your own that you can kind of just have complete control over and have a lot of fun
Yeah.
with too. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. I agree. It's definitely made me a better writer as well too. But speaking of, you recently shared something that you learned, 7 messaging principles you've gathered from some of our friends, and some people have been mentioned multiple times on the show. That's Emma Stratton and Anthony Pierre. Can you
Absolute
walk us
gems.
through those? Yeah, they're great. But can you walk us through those 7 messaging principles?
Yes. Let me give a little context first, if that
Sure.
helps. So I I work at Classy from GoFundMe, so we are kind of the nonprofit arm of GoFundMe. And I kind of made this observation with our product marketing team that we had these messages that we would take to market under kind of a big campaign. Like we would maybe pick one big theme, and that theme would run across 6 months. But and then we would pick a new theme and then we'd run it again. But there wasn't a sense of evergreen one positioning
Mm.
articulated anywhere of like who I define positioning really simply of like what's our product, who are we for, and how are we different. That had not been articulated anywhere. And
Mm.
then out of that, a message that is kind of evergreen, that we're saying the same thing at least for a prolonged period of time, rather than kind of always at the mercy of these campaigns.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to make this big manifesto, not just for some messaging, but for a strategy change. Like I had my 3 like presuppositions I wrote is that if we identify what customers love about us, 1, and 2, build products that reflect that differentiation, and then 3, amplify that differentiation in the market, we win. So like know what customers love, build products that match that thing they love, and then be really, really vocal about that differentiation or thing they love in
Yeah.
the market. Like that's how you win. So this was all part of like a mega proposal. In that, I Trojan horsed 7 messaging principles that later became LinkedIn content. But I was just trying to kind of get my point of view across. And so I'll walk through them. None of them are me inventing the wheel. A lot of them come from like Emma Stratton, Anthony Pierre, and are my maybe sadder or contextualized versions of them. The
Sure.
first was just clear is better than clever.
Mhm.
And I think for where I was in particular, there was a lot of we're a very brand heavy company, so we're a part of GoFundMe. GoFundMe has a massive consumer brand,
Yeah.
95% brand recognition. It's really well recognized. And so when you have so much brand influence, at times when we're that's a consumer company, that practice of leaning heavily on brand and just assuming people knew what you did,
Mhm.
that bled over into the B2B side. And so I was just wanting to articulate, hey, being really, really damn clear on what we do, what our product is. Clarity is going to be 100% better. I know you want to write this clever tagline, but if people don't know what it means, that it just doesn't matter. I'm not saying anything new there, but I do think that's important.
Yeah.
The second was differentiate or die. At the risk of sounding melodramatic, what I had noticed was we had a handful of specific capabilities or features that made our product different, but scanning our homepage, looking at our product pages, you wouldn't know that. Buyers weren't finding out what really made us different until you got into a sales pitch. And then you'd find that a salesperson had tapped into it and they kind of had this talk track. So for us, that was around flexibility. So like take some of our competitors, they're very like out of the box fundraising platforms, which has its benefits. Like you can get up and running fast, but there's very little ability to be flexible about your brand, flexible how you structure a page, that sort of thing. Where for us, our platform's very flexible. So I was pushing for this was all building up to this idea of like what our positioning would be and doubling down on this idea of flexibility. So differentiate or die, like that's what's going to help us win. Third was that jargon is an enemy. We
Yeah.
we had a lot of jargon that had leaked into our kind of world. If you look at our homepage, there's still plenty of it. I am trying to root it out, but we would say things about like create memorable donation experiences. And it's like, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
Versus it's like create a beautiful campaign. That's understandable. Like this campaign is beautiful. It looks nice. Like that's super clear. Or
Yep.
build a drag and drop campaign without compromising your brand. Great. Like that's understandable. So I was trying to push for like, how do we weed out this jargon that seems so clear to us, but it's actually not as clear as you would think.
Mm-hmm.
Four is, again, I said you can't, so one, clear is better than clever.
Mm-hmm.
Two, differentiate or die. Three, jargon is an enemy. The fourth was you can't say it all, focus.
Yeah.
And I think anyone who works on a platform product will feel this. So there's like 6 or 7 products within our product. It is a fundraising platform.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this temptation then that every single time you talk about the product, you have to kind of touch on everything.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we can't have that be our hero because we left out 3 products. Because I was like recommending, hey, the thing people love about us is they love our donation pages. Let's double down on donation pages. They're like, but what about this? What about that?
Yep.
And my conviction is you can't say it all. If you try to say it all, you end up saying nothing. Mm-hmm. And so I was really pushing for focus. The fifth is, this is very much an Anthony Pierreism. That could be a word. But it was customers do care about features. Anthony talks about this ad nauseum, but there's that kind of tired trope that customers don't care about features, they care about benefits. And I think at one point that was a helpful corrective, but we've swung so far to the other end where most messaging is very benefit heavy and not very clear on the features. Yeah. And buyers have stopped trusting that. Mm-hmm. In part because every product out there is trying to save you time or money. It's literally all of them. You can't, there's basically nothing that doesn't fall in that category, particularly in B2B, is they're promising money one way or another, or they're promising time one way or another, which is basically money. So all roads lead back to promising money. Yep. And so it's more compelling and believable to a prospect or a customer if you, instead of just saying we save you money, you give the mechanics of how you'll do that, which in my mind is the feature. This is exactly what this thing does. Explain what it does and trust that they're smart enough to actually draw the connection. Maybe you eventually get to revenue, you eventually get to benefits, whatever. But Emma likes to talk about this idea, Emma Stratton likes to talk about this idea of messaging altitude, of like there's At the highest level, you could fly at 30,000 feet and it's saving you money. And or you could fly at the bottom, like 100 feet above the ground, and you're getting into like release note level details or support article level details, and how most messaging needs to be somewhere in the middle,
Mm.
particularly on a website. So number 5 was customers do care about features; they need to know it. Number 6 was talk to your champion like a human. Now this was cheating because it's kind of 2 points. One is that most of your messaging should be targeted towards your champion. People tend to try to write to either too many people, you write
Mhm.
on your homepage or on your site, on your marketing assets to try to appeal to a wide audience. Like, well, we want to appeal to the champion, we want to appeal to their boss, we want to appeal to the C-suite. And when any of those people land on our website, they need to understand what we do. The problem is those people aren't reading your website. And even if they are, they're skimming it. There's not who it's for, and that problem can be solved by you build a landing page for C-suite, or build a landing page for CFOs, whoever you need to speak to,
Yeah.
so that your primary disposition in messaging should be take the person who is going to in be kind of your mole in the company you're trying to break into, and they're going to talk to every single person on their team about how this product is great and how we need to get it, and they're going to push hard. That's your champion.
Mhm.
And your messaging should be freighted toward that person, zero in on that person,
Mhm.
and then talk to them like a human. This is not saying much new other than jargon or clarity,
Yeah.
but I think Emma uh, Stratton has the great analogy of the barbecue
Yeah.
conversation,
I've
where
heard
like,
that one.
how would you explain this over a barbecue? So helpful,
Mhm.
like super super helpful. So that was clear is better than clever. Differentiate or die. Jargon's an enemy. Can't say it all. Focus. Customers do care about features. Talk to your champion like a human. And then finally, good messaging flows from your positioning. And this was trying to say that the primary message we take to market should have a very clear line of sight back to what our position is. So in our case, we're trying to lean in. I won't lift up the hood completely, but
Sure.
there's some areas of our positioning that we're really trying to lean into. One of them was around this idea of flexibility that I just hinted at. And
Mhm.
so if that's the kind of corner of the market where we're saying, hey, we're really trying to win nonprofits who really care about brand flexibility, they really care about getting to configure this platform to their exact needs, they want this level of configurability that is more sophisticated. That needs to be in our messaging. It has to come through, and that's if it doesn't, those two don't connect, of like the corner of the market we're trying to claim
Mhm.
and the messaging we're writing about our product, then there's a miss there.
Mhm.
But those are my 7. They're not perfect. They made a nice slide because they make a nice little pyramid because they get progressively longer,
Yeah,
which
yeah, I
was
took notes. Yeah.
it was all trying
That's
to
funny.
be in a presentable slide format, but that's where those came from.
Yeah, those are, oh man, those are so good. I honestly don't even have anything to like follow up on those because you explained them really well. And we've had a couple times on the show, we've had conversations of almost, who was it? It was Gab. He was talking about junk food advice. And
Mm,
sometimes you can get the clear over clever can be a junk food advice when you
totally,
just are giving that. Like, so someone says, just be clear, not clever. Okay.
totally.
And then what? So what? But what you just did is you just fully broke down why and how you came to that conclusion, based off of other people like Emma Stratton, Anthony Perry, who've done so much research and so much time crafting those thoughts. And then, people like us get to learn from them.
Uh huh.
I can already feel, people just, going back, I don't know, going back 5 minutes to replay that. But just to sum it up, if someone is taking notes, it's 1 is clear over clever, 2 is differentiate or die, 3 is jargon is an enemy. I like how you said you've had some of it leak in there.
Uh huh.
4 is you can't say it all, focus. 5, customers do care about features. 6, talk to the champion like a human. And 7, good messaging flows from good positioning. Did I hit them all?
I think that's it. You nailed it.
Awesome.
A note
Awesome.
on the clear is clever, because
Yeah, go for it.
I will say, best case scenario, you're clear and clever.
Best
That's
case. Yeah, that's
that's
tough though.
best case. I'm all for it. If you can find something that does both, I'm in. That sounds great.
Mhm.
Most of the time, when copywriters or messenger or people who are writing messaging go clever, the clarity gets lost. So
It does.
I'm not saying don't be clever. I'm just saying at the end of the day, if you have to pick one, what matters most is that clarity.
Yeah. Awesome. That was good. I love those seven. Um, the next thing I want to talk about and get in a little bit to what you're doing at Classy, and that is your approach to testing messaging, especially for new feature, any type of like new feature launches you have at Classy. Can you jump into that a little bit?
Yeah, so I I'll say I have often had to go rogue to figure out how to do this because like we can't we're in the fundraising category, fundraising platform category, and we don't have the luxury of just getting to use Winter to test our product. And I think there's a lot of people who probably experience that. Like unless you're
Yeah.
really in the kind of stereotypical SaaS world where you're in that cycle of people selling SaaS to other people who are selling SaaS, you don't really get to benefit from something like Winter a lot of times
Yeah.
because they're kind of staying in this B2B ecosystem. So your buyer is someone like a product marketer or an AE or a engineer. But
Yeah.
for us, they don't have fundraisers on their platform. So that's not helping us. And so I had to go a little bit rogue. I know a lot of my messaging has ideally been before we launch. And I end up tying myself really closely to the product manager. And I rarely am going to a customer and saying, hey, what do you think of this messaging? It just because that's not valuable for the customer most of the time. Like that's pure sacrifice if you're asking them to give feedback on your messaging. What
Mhm.
is a little more valuable is if you can say, hey, we're building something really new and exciting. Do you want to do you want to see it? Or
Mhm.
do you want to weigh in on it? Or do you want to maybe be a part of a beta test for it? And I then will tie up with that product manager and I'll basically come up with a pitch that is, hey, here's what I think is the basic talk track. And typically it's in the form of a slide deck. And what I'll often do is actually I'll sit down on those calls. We're with this customer, and I'll walk through the pitch that kind of tees up right to what this product does, and then I'll explain what the product does. And honestly, the PM, some PMs are awesome with customers. A lot of them are pretty technical and not as great with customers.
Yeah.
Um, and so I find then is that I get this opportunity to in front of a customer pitch this product, and then I get to just sit back and listen and see what their understanding is based on the questions they ask. It's two sided because I'll ask questions about like, do you think you would use this? What would you change? Like, what a lot of times I'm asking these product-y questions,
Yeah.
but every single facial expression, every piece of follow up, their level of excitement or non-excitement is all telling you these clues about messaging,
Yeah.
and it's giving this feedback. So for me, that's been probably my most consistent way of like just getting to kind of Trojan horse it into conversations about products we want to beta or products that we're building and tying kind of myself at the hip with the product manager.
Mhm.
Another opportunity was yesterday I got to join our customer advisory board,
Oh,
which
nice.
is a coveted spot. We
Yeah.
don't always get the chance to do that because everyone there. I think there's five product marketers at Classy from GoFundMe and a bunch of product managers. People want the time with these customers, and I got to come in and give an update on where we were going with the product we launched last year. And so again, same thing. I have this new pitch. I'm getting to put it in front of them. I'm getting all those cues. And then we actually had this problem around naming. Like, what are we going to call this? Because it's not the same. This product is changing enough that it needs a new name. And
Mhm.
so I put three names in front of them and said, "Hey, I know this is not necessarily your job, but we're seeing that this product's evolved. It needs a new name. If you all had to pick a name for this, or you had to describe it to someone else in your organization to determine if you're going to use it, which of these would you pick? And you drop A, B, or C in the chat?" And they all just
Nice.
voted. And
Nice. That's
and the funny
awesome.
thing is, I had a view on what it was going to be, what
Mhm.
the winner was going to be. Our head of product management had a view on what it was going to be. And then there was a third option in there that was like my second preferred option. And we were both wrong. And it was that third option that they all
No
pretty
way.
much unanimously picked. So there are those moments where that can't be traded. But that's typically what it's looked like for me. I there are other scrappy ways to do it that I've done in startups. Like I think in a startup, it's actually easier to test it. You can if you're a product marketer and you have control over social, because a lot of times that happens if you're a small company. Like I remember testing messaging and just be like, I'm just going to do an organic social post or two about this and see if people resonate, if they click or if they engage with it.
Hmm.
And fat like that was a way to test it, or have my founder post about it and see if that would work,
Yeah.
or run it in an email campaign and see what the engagement was like there. But the bigger your company gets, often the more limited you are on channels. And so that's where I found this linking myself to a product manager and getting in front of a customer that way that's been the way that's worked for me.
Yeah. Oh, these are really good. I love the nuance as well, and having to be scrappy. Like you said, like, there's those companies out there like Winter where you can put your message in front of a larger audience. But
Yeah.
when you have the chance to just kind of come face to face and you see those, Zach Messler called it a virtual head nod of you
Mhm.
can sit there and you can see them reacting to what you're saying. There's a ton of value in that. I had two follow-up questions on there. How did you choose the customer that you wanted to get on the call with?
So depends on the stage. So
Mhm.
when we were building a brand new product, so I work a lot on our data intelligence products
Okay.
at Classy from GoFundMe. So that's kind of the world I'm in, living in, AI, machine learning, that sort of stuff. And I actually worked with our customer success managers and said, hey, do you have any customers who have expressed interest in AI and machine learning? This was like right when I started, so that was almost a year ago. And before we had really taken some products to market, like it was early. And I got like a cursory first list. And I said, okay, let me see if I can get these people on the phone. And I think I was able to get like half of them on the phone, which was still great. And over the span of a couple months, got to sit down and do 15 customer interviews, which doesn't sound like a lot, but honestly, if you
That's a
press
good
most
amount.
organizations and you press most PMs and even PMMs, like a lot of them don't get that many customer interviews.
Hmm.
And so I think it's just because it's hard. It's hard to schedule. It's a big ask, that sort of thing. And so that was one phase. And then for something that we're iterating on, I have the luxury of seeing, all right, who's adopted this product, and going back to pulling a smaller list, or I guess at that point, a larger list of company or our customers who have actually used that product. And I'm going to go back to them. Having a customer advisory board, again, is another useful kind of
Helps.
tool.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
find customer advisory boards can be tricky because I think a lot of times companies want to make them all their enterprise customers. But if you're in denial about maybe your product's actually a good fit for mid market, or most of your customers are mid market, but enterprise is where the money is, or I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
everyone wants to be a freaking enterprise company, and
Oh, I know.
so many companies are in denial. Especially if you're a
Oh, yeah.
platform. If you're a platform, you're probably not the best fit for enterprise. That's my take. But still, having a cab, having anyone, having real people to talk to, that alone is its own luxury. So that's some of the way it's a lot of times feeling in the dark because there's just not a lot of process. And even if you talk to customer success, most time customer success doesn't want to burden their customers. Um, Product, if they have a meeting, they don't always want to add people to it. Like there's a sense of this almost greed of talking to customers, or like
Yeah,
protectiveness.
for
But I
sure.
think that's what I found has worked for me.
Yep. Yeah, I've definitely experienced some of that as well. Of sometimes it's a fight to get on there and be like, "Hey, can I join the call?" Oh,
Yeah,
not this one. Maybe the next one. This one we're talking
yeah,
about this specific thing. Like,
yeah.
ah, all right.
I will say, if you can come with the pitch and the story, that has helped open doors for me.
Mm,
So, like, if a PM is wants to do these interviews, and I say, hey, like, do you want me to kind of put together some slides to kind of tee up that product? They're like, yes, that sounds great. And then you find yourself on the call,
yeah.
because a lot of times, I mean, some product managers are good storytellers. A lot aren't. A lot of times they have this really strong sense of like what would be good for the product, but then like weaving that together in like a really understandable narrative is not where they shine. And that's where
Mhm.
PMM can often come in, and that can be kind of your way to sneak into conversations by providing that narrative where maybe there's a gap for it.
Cool. Yeah. Really good example. All right. So You talked a little bit about how Classy is very brand heavy. And one of the questions I tuned up for us and I wanted to ask you about is oftentimes website messaging needs input from the digital marketing team, from the brand team. But how do you, from a messaging side of things, from a product marketing side of things, how do you maintain the quality product messaging, but still play nice with SEO and with the brand voice?
A lot of compromise. Now, I'll zoom out. I think my experience has been, I hinted at this earlier, having to kind of start with this bigger context of why we want to message the way we do. So everything from what I just, those convictions around how if you find your differentiation and you innovate on that differentiation and then you amplify that innovation, that differentiation, that's how you win. And then moving that into our positioning, like that, setting this framework with our product team. So that was initially a presentation to our product team of like, this is how you win in the market. And then it made its way over to our marketing team where I could then say, hey, this is again the convictions about how you win. And here's what I think a first pass at our positioning is. Starting at these really high levels and then drilling down on the assets is how I found it getting there. Because if I just came in and said, I want to rewrite the homepage, the way our team was structured, our web team was like hell you do. Like they're not gonna let me just rewrite the homepage. And that's in our structure. There's some of this is a structural thing. I think another way to get in. So you have this option, get in by the big picture. I think that's one way. Is start getting your team aligned on the big picture and the goals and what messaging is for. Then I would say another way in is just thinking about your structure. So I think for a while, product marketing at Classy had kind of, you typically see product marketing teams aligning to one of two sides. They either skew very heavily on marketing or they skew very heavily on product. And oddly enough, we reported up through marketing, but we were glued to product. And because of that, there were some areas like messaging where aside from the launch and maybe like some communications to customers or a specific product asset, product marketing didn't have as much of a seat at the table for messaging. And so our whole product marketing team had to kind of advocate for, hey, messaging is actually a product marketing baby. And the way that we did that was not through saying that, but through giving this cohesive vision of positioning and messaging that flows from it and frameworks. We ended up working through Emma Stratton has this VBF framework of value. What's the top line value unlock for your customers? 3 benefits that fall underneath that value, and then F features. You under those, you can basically almost like a pillar format. You could have this one piece of value, 3 benefits underneath it, and then you can stack kind of up bolstering those benefits features. And we put all this into one framework, and that framework sort of unlocked something where everyone could see that there was strategy behind this. This wasn't just about opinions. It connected to our product, and that got us a lot of traction. And I would say even in the last year, our product marketing team it's shifted where we have more of a seat at the table, not just on product messaging, like on a product page or on a blog about a product or an email about a product, but on just messaging more broadly on what's on our homepage, on what's happening in demand gen and beyond. So I think those are the 2 things that stand out to me. And then I think the third is just a lot of practice, a lot of doing it over and over again, and then compromising. So like we're updating our homepage right now, and what I first wrote was spicy. It took a strong point of view. It made an enemy of some of the main issues you see in our competitors, and it's gone through a lot of iterations, and now it's firmly a mild sauce. It's not spicy, but it has some of the core elements. It is a little bit more. It is more clear than it was before. And I'm thinking next time, like there'll be another chance. And slowly you do that on a product page here, a product page there, a blog there, and you slowly start to have this snowballing effect on how messaging is done broadly. And you slowly start seeing if you're on a PMM team, you start seeing how the other team members start writing their messaging this way. In our case, I encouraged our team to read through Punchy by Emma Stratton, and our whole product marketing team read it, and that really changed some of our kind of DNA, not permanently, Again, jargon sneaks in. It's like a
It does.
it's a habit that dies really hard. But that's been our journey of figuring that out. Slowly but surely, a lot of compromise and a lot of influence. I have found that a lot of times the person who puts pen to paper on strategy first can articulate the why behind a strategy, and in a way that is logically progressive, that person ends up getting the most influence. And so you just can't assume that everyone's going to think the way you think, that they've read Emma's book, they follow Anthony, they think this way. They're not going to think that way. And so you have to put pen to paper, be logical, be patient. Anyway, I've rambled too much, but
No,
that's how it's worked for me.
yeah, that was awesome. I think you brought in a lot of some of the frameworks that you use and how to bring in the type of conversations, how to start the conversation, and what exactly you've done at Classy. That's awesome. Um, I mean, compromising on messaging, it's just kind of part of the nature of it.
It's
Like,
unavoidable.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that also can come with that that comes with like maturity
Yeah.
through product marketing as you just gain more experience in it. I remember when I was first started, I was pretty gung ho, and if someone
Yeah.
turned down my messaging or what I wrote, it kind of you would like almost take it personal.
Hmm.
Um, but you learn kind of over time, like you do have to compromise on some stuff, especially depending how many seats there are at the table, and
Yeah.
but it's also pointing out having relationships with other people that are at the table who are you bringing into it. Are you comfortable enough that if they bring up something to put in the messaging that is maybe a biased opinion or something that they just do themselves, having a relationship that you're comfortable enough to actually voice that and communicating it in a way that they take it and see it.
Yeah.
That comes with time too.
Yeah. I really do think that maturity is important, and something I found, if you just want to be strategic about your career,
Mhm.
it's there's two things. One, taking in that someone else might have that point of view for a good reason is a good
Yes,
start.
for sure.
Actually wrestling with it, actually thinking through it, and it's easier to be like, no, I have my preconceived ideas about how this works, and ignore it. Think it through. You still might be right. Your mind may not be changed, but you need to at least take it seriously and have the humility to do that. And then two, just it's advantageous to, how do I put this better? It's probably more important that you are likable than that you are right. Just if you want to advance in a company, if you want to advance as a person, if you want to keep your job and not be seen as, because I'm all for having strong opinions. I have a lot of strong opinions. But I have found that a lot of times I just need to bite my tongue, not have a strong opinion, and sacrifice those opinions, and that's okay. And
Mhm.
and probably the amount of hills they have to die on is way less than the hills you want to die on.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh, this reminds me. We had Alex Eaton on the show. He's the director of product
Oh
marketing for
yeah,
User Evidence, and he's awesome. I mean, he just like went so deep into it, and what him and Mark Huber has been doing at User Evidence and what he shared was amazing. But we talked through we talked through what are the three things that make a great product marketer versus a good product marketer. And one of the three things that he mentioned was like you have to be someone that people want to work with. Like
yeah,
people on the product team, the sales team, customer success, if you come to them and you want to get on a call, if they don't like you, probably going to get a no most of the time. If they do like
yeah,
you and they know that you're going to provide value while you're on that call, both during and after, the likelihood of getting a yes is much higher. So, um, being someone that people want to work with definitely helps. That just helps in general in life, for sure. So, Colin, I wanted to ask, transitioning. We talked about product marketing works with a lot with the product team or a lot with the marketing team, but also with the sales team too.
hmm,
So, I wanted to get your take and how you do it as well of how you enable the Classy sales team on your positioning and messaging.
yeah. So I am fortunate enough to work at a company that we have a sales enablement manager. which is great.
Nice.
So Carly is wonderful. She just ran our whole sales kickoff last week, which
Wow.
cool. Something that people don't tell you about product marketing is that you kind of get the benefit of you get invited to marketing events, product events, and sometimes sales kickoff.
That's
And
true.
you just get to go to all the parties, which is
Yeah.
one of the unsung
Parties.
benefits. Like you're homeless and no one understands you, but you do get extra invites. And so I so what how that looks at Classy is that we are pretty regularly syncing up with the sales enablement manager, and a lot of her roles, she's got a constant pulse on maybe where sales is struggling and what are the avenues that I can get in front of sales or where assets can live once I kick them over to sales. But we actually have a standing Tuesday. It's Tuesdays with enablement, and that's a standing session that sales is invited to. And based on a launch or based on an upcoming change to our messaging or positioning or pricing, we will use those sessions where a product marketer will often come in and help get to run that session and write content from top to bottom. And so I hinted earlier, when we were first launching AI products for the first time, I went in and I did a deep dive on not just, hey, here's what we're launching and here's all the messaging on it, but I actually took a step back and was like, hey, what do we mean when we say AI? And there's actually all these different types of AI is an umbrella term. There's actually a lot that falls under that. Let's break into that. And then here's where our product lands. And that session becomes kind of the starting line for any enablement with our team. And it's just a regular rhythm. And I think you could do this without an SE. You could do it without a sales enablement manager. You could have a standing time on the calendar where you get together with sales teams and you just plan on, this is the time where product marketing is giving some level of enablement. You pick an issue, you pick a competitor, you pick a launch, you pick a set of messaging. Like having the standing time to get in front of sales
Mhm.
is super important. And so that's kind of the starting line. As far as some practical things, so you have your deck maybe that you're building. A lot of times, say you have this new product you launch, it's going to make its way into the demo or the deck in some way. Something that has really stuck with me is a lot of times it's really easy to have a slide that's got this sweet tagline and maybe a few bullet points on it about an area of the product. What I've started doing is I try to give a 20 to 30-second story that a salesperson can whip out in a way that feels really conversational and really casual and in the way that actual people talk. And so like last year we launched this feature called Intelligent Ask Amounts. It uses, if you're a donor, you want to give to your favorite charity, you arrive on their website. Intelligent Ask Amounts uses machine learning to predict how much Josh is likely to give and then adjusts the ask amounts in real time
Oh
based
wow.
on that prediction. And so I came up with this story. I said, hey, imagine you have a donor named James. And last year, James gave $500 to your spring campaign. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's a huge gift. But this year, James arrives on your donation form and he sees ask amounts of 50, 75, 100. A couple things might happen. James might decide, hey, you know what? Maybe my gift last year was a bit much, and he might bring it down. Or he might not remember that he gave $500. He's more likely to give $100 or $150 this year because the ask amounts weren't personalized to James. The
Yeah.
problem is most ask amounts are not personal enough, and that's why we built intelligent ask amounts. Boom. Like that's the
Boom.
story.
That's
And
awesome.
when I listen back to calls, the imagine you have a donor named James, that
Yes.
whole
Oh yeah.
thing shows up on a ton of the calls. Like it just has stuck. And maybe they'll do a different name, but that gist of like, let me walk you through the scenario of how this donor, and which in their the donor is their end user. Take whatever company it is. Like you could make a spreadsheet competitor. It's like imagine the person who's your admin, the person who's logging in. You can find the right user. That to me, this kind of like casual roll up the sleeves sort of messaging, the way that salespeople actually want to talk,
Hmm.
because they're not going to talk about, I mean, they're not going to use something about make your campaigns smarter than ever.
Yeah.
It's like what does that even mean? But they will break down like, hey, imagine you have this donor named James that did this. Like that's been just a change into how I enable sales, where I feel like I don't launch something, or I don't want to launch something where there isn't like a roll up your sleeves little story that they can wrap it in so that they
Hmm.
can say in 20 to 30 seconds, that, or 30 seconds or so, that wrap that once they finish that, the person listening gets why it's valuable.
Yeah.
And it's in basic terms. So that's been a big strategy for me. Another thing is I'm pretty active in Slack. So yesterday someone's like, hey, I'm stuck in this deal. They don't see the difference between us and X competitor. What's the deal? And I'm like, all right, keyboard warrior, just like lighting up. It's like, it comes down to 4 things. Boom, 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 boom. I think that activity and responsiveness is big. And then finally, sometimes I hop on sales calls. If it's a really big prospect and like a customer we really want to close, and maybe we know they're interested in the area of the product I work on, I'll be there and I'll enable them. And that's, I guess, call that enablement or call it just doing it for them. I'm not saying you should hop on every call, but there's value. And I almost never say no to that chance because I'm getting a chance to practice it and get all that feedback we talked about earlier in a sales call. And that's what better time to test your messaging than in that sort of moment. So that's what it's looked like for me. Smaller company, when I was like one product marketer and a small team, I had a weekly meeting with sales. We'll talk about where they're getting stuck, that sort of thing. But that's what enablement has looked like for me, at least at this stage.
Oh man, those are so good. I love the story one. You could call it a talk track, but writing one that's actually real sounds like you're speaking to a real human, sounds like an actual story. It's so good.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump into the last kind of, you can call it lightning round piece of the conversation. And the first question is, what's one piece of messaging advice you would give to listeners they can take away and implement tomorrow?
I think we hinted at it earlier, but I would say attach yourself to a product manager and see if you can pitch that new product to a customer as part of product discovery. You could sneak your way in there. It's asking less of the customer or the prospect, and you're going to get a ton out of it. And that will make for the best messaging. Yeah. Period. Is that chance to actually put it in front of real people. And I think you can enable that. You can do that tomorrow by messaging your PMs or whoever's doing product and saying, hey, do we have some time set up for this? Or if you know there's a launch coming, just say, hey, can I help set up a time for this? Like you can insert yourself, you can act on that tomorrow. But I would say that has, for me, gone the furthest.
Awesome. That's a good one. I love it. All right. So part of this conversation, I like it to make it a little bit more personal. I ask this question to everyone that comes on the show. If you could put it into a single sentence, what is living all about?
Having the values that you say that you care about actually reflected in your reality. Another way to put that is integrity, where what is true on the outside of your desires, of your longings, is translated into behavior, the way you structure your life, the way you spend your time. That to me, that connect. The more I live my life, the more I'm trying to bring those two into harmony.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Collin.
Yeah.
I always love asking that question. All right, last question. If listeners found what you said valuable today, what is one thing they can do to lift you up? Where can they find you?
A couple places. You can add me on LinkedIn. I spend more time there than I probably should. I'm the only Collin Mayjack, last name May, jack of all trades. That super easy to find me there. I was hosting a podcast on product marketing. I don't anymore. But if you feel like listening in on a very niche podcast, I host a podcast called Holy Shift that, as you mentioned earlier, is for former pastors and ministry leaders transitioning out of that world. But LinkedIn otherwise would probably be the main place.
Awesome. Collin, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on.
Dude, thanks for having me. It was an absolute blast.
Yeah, it was great. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.